Welcome to the Tapestry of Life. I am Dr. Pascal Scholes, Professor of Behavioral Health and Human Services at Community College of Philadelphia. Today's topic is education as a healing process. A primary purpose of education should be to reduce pain, separation, and hopelessness by encouraging people to explore and commit themselves to continue the search for understanding and meaning in their life. Carl Jung believed that education, and to some extent therapy, involved the exploring, reframing, confronting, and analysis of one's current and past life experiences. The process must include both cognitive and/or behavioral interventions, as well as storytelling. To discuss this topic today, I want to welcome to the show my colleague and co-host, Dr. Terry Lynn Hickman Allen, Assistant Professor of Behavioral Health and Human Services at the college, and our two very special guests, David and Maya. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
I was kind of interested in starting this session because it's one that has always been of interest to me personally, being a person who in education and watching students just develop and evolve over the last 40 or so years that I've been here. And I know both of you have a very interesting story. I know one just got her MSW and started here at Community, and one is working on their MSW right now and graduated from Community. So could you tell us a little about maybe your story, because it's kind of like a little storytelling, and then we'll move forward from there.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate this opportunity. So my story is not unlike many inner city youth, and specifically from Philadelphia. Grew up around abject poverty, and with that comes a sense of hopelessness. And so I went through different situations in my life, and initially education wasn't an option or a factor, even a possibility, and then it became the only option. And so that's what led me from education is what brought me out of and like sort of the abyss, from hopelessness into now a life full of hope.
What kind of abyss were you in, if I could use your language?
Well, so it started, during my childhood, and having an absentee father and a mother who was had issues with addiction, and so being raised by people in the community was just a negative influence. And so I got in trouble all through my adolescence, and in fact, I go to Temple now, and the grade school that I went to was across the street from Temple.
Oh, okay.
And I actually had to walk through Temple's campus to get to school, and to college life was literally not even an afterthought. People like me didn't go to college. I never conceived the notion that one day I'll go to Temple.
Why would you use the language like people like me? Who do you mean when you say like me?
Right. So that's a good question. So by people like me, I mean children, specifically minority boys, fatherless, and with a parent or both parents who have drug abuse issues. They lack the guidance that is necessary specifically for a minority boy in America to be successful. And so what I did was what many other children do. We look for it within our peers. So the only people that I saw successful in my neighborhood were the guys who sold drugs, and the guys who committed crimes, and the guys who, they had, the success. They woke up at noon, and they had the nicest car.
Right.
and so I was conditioned to bypass college because it wasn't an option. These guys didn't go, and they showed me how you can get these things. So I sold drugs. I committed other crimes such as robbery. And at 17, I committed a robbery, and I was adjudicated as an adult. And I was sentenced to in Florida in an adult prison. And I was given, at 17, a 17-year prison sentence.
Wow.
So David, what was your educational experience like pre that? Like going to school, going to classes, what was that like for you?
As an adolescent?
As a young man, as an adolescent?
Well, that experience was, it was the difference between night and day. So in my home life, my mother and her then boyfriend, throughout my adolescent years, they had a very tumultuous relationship. Mm-hmm. So they would keep us up all night, the children rather, my brothers and sister and I, arguing, fighting, and oftentimes when we went to school, in the morning the police will have just left our residence, and we've been up all night because we couldn't sleep. Police are roaming through the house, and then we are expected to go to school and do well.
And perform, sure.
And so in that environment, we didn't have much, so oftentimes we would go to school hungry, and if you missed breakfast, you just have to deal with it till lunch. And so with that, school was just not, it just wasn't.
Wasn't a very happy
conducive.
place to go to.
Right.
Yeah.
I got in trouble because I didn't do my homework, and I couldn't do my homework because it's half the time I didn't understand it and have help at home. And so, just the whole education process just wasn't valued in my family, and specifically in my nuclear family. And so, and then we didn't have a lot. And so, like, when it would rain, I would loathe the rain because I had holes in my shoes. And I knew that by the time I got to school, my feet would be wet. And so, you go to school and now you have on high waters because your clothes don't fit well, and you're expected to excel. And don't get me wrong, many people do.
Yes.
I just was one who didn't.
Well, it is a kind of a difficult environment. We'll get back to you in a second. How about you, Ma?
Start from the beginning about
If
school.
you would like.
Well, I started off. I went to Catholic school from pre-K to second grade. As a matter of fact, it was third grade. And my father was killed, and my mother, so she couldn't afford it no more, so we had to go to public school. So it was different. It was a different environment because in Catholic school, I was writing in pen in first grade. It was a whole different experience to going to a school where your book wasn't your book. It had names and it was used. I wasn't used to that.
Okay.
And I went to Stanton, and then I went to Barrett. And at the time, Barrett was like one of the worst middle schools in the city. I was there that year when 2 people came in with a gun and with the teachers. So that was really, it was like different for me, but you get used to it. So I went to Barrett 5th through 8th. Then in high school, I really didn't go to school much. So I wound up getting kicked out of like 4 schools, high school schools, and I wound up going to disciplinary school. I got kicked out of there, and then the school district said at 16 they don't have to pay for you to go back to school anymore. So I wound up waiting for a while, and I wound up getting enrolled in youth build. So when I went to youth build, we do 1 year, then you get your diploma. Like you help rehab a house, and while you earn your diploma. So
Was your high school diploma?
Get your high school diploma. So college was never an option, and I didn't never think school was really important because really I only got like an 8th grade education because after Barrett I never really went to high school, so I didn't really know what anything was. College wasn't a thought. And so I was working jobs, and I had a daughter, and I remember working at a hotel, and I remember thinking like, I done did everything under the sun right. Let me think about this school thing. Let me see what college would be. And so I enrolled at community college. It was crazy. I dropped so many English classes and dropped so much, because I didn't know what was going on. I would just think in school you show up. So when I got here, I just showed up to classes. And I was like, what they keep talking about this syllabus? Why does everyone keep saying this syllabus? Why do we need to know this? I didn't know that's like a guide to everything that's happening next. I'm thinking, I'm just coming, I'm gonna do what they say, but I don't understand it. And I remember taking a teacher here, Ari Banks, and he was telling us, go to the writing center. use the resources in the school.
Ari's actually still here.
Yeah, that was like the best, literally, that was the best advice, because it's like once you start using the resources, you were able to, those teachers in the Writing Center will help you understand the assignment and help you understand what you had to do. So it was like a way to advocate and learn how to navigate the college world. And I use that for math as well. And then it's, you know, you use it for any subject you have. There's always support. And I think that helped me. Even when I left here, went to LaSalle, and even when I was at Widener, just using that support and asking questions and navigating it.
How did you make the transition? You mentioned that you spent some time incarcerated in Florida, and you obviously came back to Philadelphia. What was different when you came back to Philadelphia?
So what was different was, so I went into prison as a 17-year-old boy, and then I came out as a 24-year-old man. And so for me, when I initially came out in 1999, I wasn't aware of the necessity for an education. I wasn't aware of that. And so I worked different jobs. I worked at a pharmaceutical company in the laboratory, and I remember detesting my alarm clock because my alarm clock signified a dead end for me. So when I went to work, I knew that it was a job, and I was stuck there. I had no education to get out of. It was more like, well, I need this job, but I don't want it because it's a dead end. There's no mobility. There's no lateral mobility, and there's certainly no upward mobility. And so when my alarm clock would go off, I would sit on the side of the bed and just think, my life stinks. And so, and then in a moment of honesty, I wound up had children, and the money that I was making just wasn't enough to support my family. So I tried to find other jobs, and I even thought about becoming a cab driver, which is a very dangerous profession, but I knew that I had to feed my family. And so I wasn't hired. I put in many applications, and I wasn't hired, but my expenses were building. And so
Well, you weren't hired because of your record?
because I have no way to prove it.
Oh,
but
okay.
That's my suspicion. And the job that I currently had was because a family member knew the person who was in charge of the hiring there. So that was the only reason that I was where I was. And so the other positions that I had applied for, just menial positions, you know, a cook, a helper, a cleaning person, a cab driver. Even the cab driver didn't call me back. And so I wound up starting to sell drugs. And so I did that for several years. And so that was like plan C. And I knew what I was doing was wrong. And so I had a decision to make. You know, watch your children be without like you were, potentially have holes in their shoes going to school, or make money as best you can, and that's what I did. And so as I started to see them grow, I realized that if I get in trouble, I'm going to be removed from the very thing that I'm trying to protect and raise. So I stopped that. And then in 2010, I implemented Plan like D, which was go to school. And
What led you to get to Plan D? I mean, was it just...
Well, I was running out of plans.
Oh, so community college was your D
It
plan.
was like community college. I started to realize that the only way that I could rise from my current situation is through education. Simply because I'm at a severe disadvantage. In America, I'm at a disadvantage for different reasons, and then you tack on a felony conviction.
History, yeah.
And so it became apparent to me that the only way to neutralize my felony conviction is through education and employability. because if a person who does not have a criminal record is just as qualified for a position that I am applying for, but I do have a criminal record, just common sense, just conventional thinking would say hire the less risky person to our company, which would be the person without a record.
Maya, does this make sense to you, this transition? Is that similar to, not exactly, I mean, but I mean, why did you
Yeah, 'cause
think
I
that
had
college
a-
Yeah, what plan
would
was
be-
this for you, D or E?
Yeah.
How about that?
Well, actually, I had a record too, as a juvenile and as an adult. So it was like stuff was holding me back from getting employment as well.
Okay.
So it was like you couldn't, certain jobs I just couldn't get. And I think culturally, in certain cultures, I think families are just okay with you getting a city job because they tell you get that city job,
Yeah.
get that city job with benefits. That's what you grow up hearing. And one thing, things have changed. A post office job, I mean, with Amazon, they're not around the way they were. So it was like I couldn't get a lot of the jobs that my peers could get because I had a record.
Right. So and we do have this whole ex-offender program now at the college, but it sounds like part of the transition to get a job and to save your life was the mere fact that you could maybe begin to put things in front of you that would offset your criminal history or your
Right.
experiences and your background, and therefore put you more at the top of
Right, because they see that you have education
application
now.
process.
Right, and then you know how to too. They know you went through training, and you know that you're qualified for the job.
Now, it's interesting that both of you picked a profession, a human service profession called social work, which, in all sincerity, I bet you the whole four of us who are in the field would say that a lot of the reasons why we wound up where we were was because we felt that education really uplifted our lives. I mean, it was a way to get someplace, whether it was with a criminal history or just growing up poor or, whatever the topic might be. And I've often related my own life experiences, and I felt always that if education didn't come my way, I probably wouldn't have been as happy or successful or comfortable with where I am today. I don't actually feel, I don't necessarily want my dean to hear this, but I don't actually feel like I go to work when I come here, which is an interesting perspective on work.
I would have to agree.
Yeah. I mean, I feel when I come here that I'm just working with my people, so to speak, who have similar life experiences. And so when you talk about the transition, what did education, how did it heal you, education, which, either one, we'll hear topics from both of you, but how did you become a more positive person, if you want to use that language, and see your, because when we get older, not only older, when we get experience, what we do is those experiences actually allow us to reflect back on our life. And when we look back on our life, we can see good things because good things are happening to us now. And if we continue to have negative things happen to us in our life, we tend to go back and see all the negativity. Now, I'm assuming from the little conversations I've had with both of you, that experience has moved you in a positive way that you can now use your life experience in a more positive way, even though it was a negative experience. And I wonder, how did education help heal that? How'd you get there? Either one of you, and that makes sense, doesn't it, Terry?
Sure, and I can speak on that too.
I think for me, education helped me understand systems and understanding how important and how things work. And then it also let me know how to advocate for not only myself, but people in my community. And it helped change the way I look at things in my environment and how you can, when you're growing up, you hear people complain. You might hear people complain, oh, why this happened, this one happened in that neighborhood. And now when I start learning stuff, my cousin like, this should have never taught you how to read. Because she would say that, she was like, oh, here you go. Because I'd be like, no, well, because it started helping me see that I can change things. Like, okay, we can advocate to get a trash can on the end of the block, or for certain services in the community, we can get there. We can get things that happen more. You can write to the legislature. I just became this voicer, making the state reps and people work for you. You put them in place, have a voice, you could change what's going on. So it's helped me to kind of understand how important it is, and even talk to younger people when they're going to school, like, you should go to school, you could be anything you want, or just be, college is not that hard, or, you know, it just changed the way I looked at a lot of things in my community and within myself.
I might ask you a question. I don't know if this might be too personal, but if it is, we can.
Okay, it's okay.
You originally talked about being Catholic, and obviously you're Islam.
Right.
Now. I was wondering, did Islam have an effect on you moving into learning, or did learning have an effect on your Islamic faith? I kind of was curious as to which came first, the apple, you know.
I went to school first. I started school first,
Oh,
and
okay.
then it came. But it's a good balance
Okay.
because it is a good balance to it. Like I learned, like school taught me how I learned about my community and society and way things and how to better yourself in society and knowing you need education.
Right.
And Islam changes the person, just how I think, how I behave.
And it is a
But kinda-
cornerstone. of
yeah, it
Islamic,
is kind of,
yeah.
yeah. So, I mean, it is a balance.
Right. So it was both of them were helpful in
Yes,
the sense of moving
yes.
you forward.
Yes.
So I, like Maya, went to Catholic schools too growing up. And, you know, in Catholic schools, they talk about where you're going to college. So it was a natural transition for me to go to college, but I didn't know a lot of people that had went.
Yeah, I didn't.
And so not having like a role model in
Sure.
front of me, my mom had an associate's degree, but I didn't know anyone with a bachelor's degree. And if I knew them, I didn't know that they had one. And so sometimes when you don't see anyone in your environment that is doing something that you aspire to do, it feels very isolating. And so I'm wondering if either of you are first generation college goers, and if so, what was your experience kind of breaking through that barrier?
In my nuclear family, I'm certainly the first person to go to graduate from college to get my bachelor's degree and pursue my master's degree. So it seems strange because on the one hand, my family members literally look up to me for this feat that they themselves could easily accomplish. Because, you know, if I can do it, the monkey with a wooden leg can do it. I'm not special at all. And so, but when I tell them that, they say, well, it's not for me. You know, somehow my molecular structure is different than theirs.
But in all sincerity, it is important and it is significant that you continued on and got your degree. I mean, I had a similar background. I mean, my mother, I think, had a third grade education, and my father, I think, got to 10th or 11th grade. So I was the first one in my family to get a degree. And interestingly enough, when I got my doctorate, my mother thought I was a physician. That's where she was. A lovely lady, but she wanted me, if I could give her a physical exam or something. And I said, no, Mom, I'm not that kind of. But it goes to show you, they just can't. And I never could get help from them because my mother was pretty illiterate. I mean, she, you know, third grade. And my father was a policeman, so he was working and doing whatever he was doing. So I was pretty much left on my own. And I remember that as I went along, something hit me. I don't know, it wasn't automatic, but over time, reading became important. And I remember movies became important because I could sit in a movie theater and project myself right into the movie, and I could be in, you know, this was not the movie that I was watching then, but like I could be in Star Trek, or I could be in, and it was almost like I was able to get out of North Philadelphia by just projecting myself into the movies, and it was a comforting thought. And I often wonder if those transitions occur with a lot of people, if certain things happen to you and you say, well, yeah, I want to go over there. And when we met earlier, I said there were two significant things in my life. One was finding out that education is important, and the second was getting a bicycle and being able to ride out of my neighborhood from North. But you know, how did the transition? When did you know you were on the right path? I mean, I believe you probably. I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but the experience in the behavioral health program, I know for both of you, if I know anything about the students who have gone through that program, is the transition occurs over time, and it's not the experience they thought they were going to get at community college. I don't know if that was what happened.
Yeah, it wasn't. This was boot camp.
Oh, okay.
Everything after that was like, oh, you could do anything. Because it was really, because I came in like lost and so blind, but when I left, I knew it helped me. It prepared me for the other 2 universities. It was like, this was boot camp.
What
time.
happened here, Maya, for you? Like, what was it like for you here?
I didn't get into the behavior. I didn't get into the program first. I didn't even. I was just taking classes, and the classes I was taking, I was like, groups class. What's this about? Or this class? What's that about? Then I took so many classes. Then it was like, well, you might as well be a part of the program. So when you graduate, you need to be in the program. And I was like, oh, because I didn't even really know what social work or the program really was. Like, I didn't know what a social work was. I thought social work was DHS. Much as I knew, I was like, oh, I'm not working for DHS. I don't. So I didn't know a lot about it, but the class that I was taking was just so interesting. So it was like addiction. I took addiction. I took so many classes that was relevant to my life, and it just helped me. And it was like, and then you were around people. It was like, you were around. I felt comfortable around my peers, because I think too, it has to be wherever you at. You have to feel comfortable to stay, and it was comfortable. And it was a lot of people. I was in classes with like a mixed blend. It was like older, younger, where a lot of people went through what you were going through, or they faced other struggles in their life. So and then all y'all classes, we were allowed to like share our stories. So it was like, whoa, I can relate to that. So.
And for you, David, what transformation occurred while you were in the behavioral health program?
It's a loaded question, by the way. But
You had Terry Lynn as, I think, a teacher, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I don't want to sound generic or artificial, but you really, really had an impact on my progress.
I appreciate that.
What kind of an impact did she have?
It has to be noted that in addition to Dr. Allen now, you were Dr. Hickman then,
Yes.
and Carrie Arnold and another professor named Ron Gooden.
Oh yeah, he teaches drug and alcohol.
Just amazing, just really, really impactful. That was the transformation where because I used to sit in the back of the class, because all of the experiences that I remembered with regard to school were negative. And it took me a minute to realize, several classes, to realize that I no longer had holes in my shoes anymore. I no longer was the eyeball with the high waters, and I wasn't going to be ridiculed or talked about, or pull your pants down jokes. And so that's when I realized it was that we were all moving toward the same goal. And I started to take my hoodie off. I wore hoodies a lot, and that was a defense mechanism for me. It kind of hid my appearance, and it made me feel safe. I was in my little comfortable hoodie, and so that's when one assignment in particular brought me just out of my shell, and it was in your class, and it was about bereavement and loss, and I was really close with my mother. I've been accused of being a mama's boy, and those are accusations only. No, I was a mama's boy.
I remember that assignment.
I was a mama's boy, and when my mom passed away, there were unresolved issues between her and I, and so those memories I locked away in my safe, and when with this assignment, I had to retrieve them, which was the first time that I had looked at them in years, since actually at that time, since she had passed away. And I remember presenting the information about the loss of my mom in front of the class, and I cried. And
we all did too.
right. And that was just a show of solidarity. But I cried in front of a classroom full of my peers, and not to mention my professor, and I wasn't judged. I wasn't ridiculed. I was supported. And that was the moment where I knew I was where I needed to be.
You know, it's interesting. That example is actually what is considered by many to say that's effective educational programs have this kind of therapeutic intent. I mean, I know some people in math wouldn't agree with me necessarily, but even in math, you have to connect to it and buy into the negative stories of what math did to you over the years, or English. And it's only through that cathartic, that kind of exposure in education, I believe, that you can move yourself forward. I've often said that people who go through a course and are the same as they were when they entered the course have not received anything from the course except knowledge that they don't know how to use or won't use. And I don't know if you, but I know people that I grew up with who eventually got degrees, and they're actually worse than they were without the degree. There's an expectation in the acquisition of a degree that you are not the person you were when you started, but you are totally different at the end. And I think both of you have that kind of healing discussion. Well, I haven't heard from Maya, but your experience does reflect this kind of transition or transformation that education, we hope, does. And it's actually what keeps many, at least of the faculty, not only in behavioral health, but in English and all the other disciplines, staying here at community, because those transitions are tremendously helpful, not just to you, but are reinforcing to us as a way of looking at life and how life helps out. And I never got that transition until I was in my master's program, interestingly enough,
Yes, same
because my undergraduate program at LaSalle was very cognitive. You know, everything was, even though it was social welfare and sociology and psychology, it was very, very cognitive, and you couldn't emote in those classes because you were considered to be too visceral or too much like an animal if you were very emotive. And the emotional stuff that I think you're relating to now was something that I didn't see until I was in the master's program and beyond, and where there was that kind of supportive environment that you talk about being here in undergraduate. But I think a lot more of that should occur, especially for individuals who have had life experiences with transitions really need to occur, which I suspect is a tremendous amount of the students that we have at CCP, Community College of Philadelphia.
What's the class? The group class with Dr.
Process?
The one where the teacher doesn't speak.
Yeah,
Participation, yeah, group.
Group dynamics.
The one in she has the curly hair.
Elise.
Fagan, Dr.
Fagan, Dr. That class was
Amazing.
I just was like, what? Because in the beginning, it's like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Why she's not talking? Is she's going to interrupt? But it taught you about yourself and how you could be offensive with your body language.
Oh, yes.
And how, I mean, the things you do unconsciously, like how you interact with someone. And it taught you so much. And it's like when you, and it's the assignments you do with the class, literally go along with how the group is moving. It's like, what is going on? How did they know this was going to happen? So that class was amazing. And by the time you leave and your last day, you like, I don't want it to end. You don't, because
Well,
you
you
feel.
know why you don't want it to end? Because all classes should engage a student in the learning, not just cognitively.
Right.
I mean, at least that's the way we feel. I mean, I don't know if a lot of faculty would totally agree with this thought. But I think the most effective education is an education that heals through emotion. You know, you need to have the information, but the information has to connect to an emotive life. And in that connection, you get this balance that we need to have and exist in life, because there's always this balance between your thoughts and your feelings, and you get that sometimes. When you get it, I think you live a new life.
And Pat, I think the other thing is, like you mentioned, David, and you mentioned creating a supportive environment so people can explore some of those past negative experiences. And that has to be done with people who you can trust.
Right.
And I think one of the things that happens, especially in the behavioral health curriculum, is that it's almost like a cohort. It's like you all are in courses together, you build relationships with each other along with us as professors, and you feel comfortable. And we talk about this in our courses. How do we create a climate for our clients to grow? And we have to do the same thing in the classroom. How do we create the climate? What goes in the soil? And so respect and empathy and genuineness, all those core values that we talk about as behavioral health workers or social workers, that has to happen in the classroom, especially when we're dealing with students who have had varying and diverse experiences coming in. And I think that's one of the things we tend to do pretty well with, Pat.
So yes, it's what keeps me here, that's for sure. So you make this transition and you go through an experience here. At the end of the experience here, before you go into your bachelor's program, can you tell me what you think you were then as a healed person or a healing person than you were when you first came to the college? It would be interesting to hear from both of you at least a couple thoughts. I mean, I know they don't have to be real thorough, but because I do want to talk a little bit about the experience of this experience, and then what does that experience have to do with your BSW program and how it helped you heal through that program, which I think.
I think for me, when I was leaving here, it was like I was leaving, but I knew it was the next step. But I was hungry for more. I wanted more. I wanted more because it changed me so much in the way I thought about things.
Oh, okay.
So I knew it was more. So I was like, I need more. I want more. I want to know what else can I like, because it was, you're writing about yourself, you're learning certain things, but it was like, okay, now I know it's more out, because I knew it was the next level. So it left me really hungry to get.
So it gave you a thirst for knowledge,
Yes,
as they say.
yes, I was ready. I was ready, and I was ready to learn because there was so much stuff still that I didn't know about. So I was ready to go to the next step.
Okay.
For me, it was as much of a desire to advance my education when I left CCP as it was a necessity. And Dr. Allen, you encouraged me. One of and you have many jewels, but one of the jewels you left me with was you advised me to advance my education, because the higher you go, the thinner the pool is. So the last time I looked at the statistic, about 14% of the U.S. population have a bachelor's degree, and about 7% of the U.S. population has a master's degree, and only about 3% of the U.S. population have a PhD. And so the higher you go in your education, the more valuable you become. And so a person in my situation where just as a saying, I was handed lemons. And people say when given lemons, you make lemonade. I happen to like lemonade. And so that's what I decided to do. And the only way that I could make figurative lemonade from the lemons that I inherited was to advance my education. And so there was just no other way. And so, again, social work, because I knew I started out in human services in the behavioral health program here, which just lit the fire under me. And I was advised by you, Dr. Allen, to broaden my scope, and if I was going to go any further, think about going into social work, because social work, there's so many things under the umbrella of social work, and so you can do a lot of things with a human services degree, but with a social work degree, there's more options. And for a person in my situation, I felt that there were so many doors closed to me. I needed to make as many options as I could available to me. And so advancing my education was literally the only way. Otherwise, I would be still be getting rejected for some of the most dangerous jobs in the world, such as a convenience store worker, which I applied and I never got a call back for, or a cab driver.
Because of your history.
Because of my history, right, criminal history. So education for me was as much of a desire to become a more educated person as it was a necessity.
So Maya, what was your experience like when you pursued your BSW?
It was scary. It was like I came from because when I left here, it was like when I went there. So, and it's not a lot of African Americans at LaSalle, so it was like, oh my gosh. So the social work program is small, but I started to take some philosophy courses, other courses, and then I'm Muslim, so it wasn't a lot of Muslim kids there either. So it was like at first, the first year was lonely because you miss your friends that you had built, you know, friendships with I miss people from community. I miss the teachers. Everything was new.
Yes, you called me a few times.
Yeah, it was new, and it was like I was like, I don't want to be. I knew. I enjoyed what I was learning, but I was like, this is like another world. It was like another world. I was around kids who never been around a Muslim before.
Right.
So once they got comfortable, they're touching me. Can you wear this all the time? Oh my God, what does this mean? Yes, it was really like a different experience, and I was like, they're from different places, so they never seen me, and it was like, this is weird. And you know, and after a while though, because I was with them throughout the whole 2 years, so we got to know each other and build that family. But at first, it wasn't there.
You went in as a major, it was junior. When you go in as a
Yep.
junior status, you go in with your major.
Yep, I went in as a junior status. So it was really hard. It was difficult at first. It was really difficult. It was a whole new world. It was new. It was
You know,
different.
it is, and I think you're totally correct when you say that. It's a whole new world, and a world that weren't prepared for.
I wasn't prepared
you
for.
know, and you wonder why there wasn't some of that preparation done prior to going, but mainly because, like you said, it was fundamentally an institution
Right.
of probably white kids, like you said, and more middle class than,
Oh, yeah,
than
and-
would normally we
And they
would
said there's a
see.
study done. I was talking to actually someone about it at LaSalle. No, was it at Wharton? It was at one of the schools. I was talking to someone, like a professor, and they said there's a study done on some kids don't succeed in those environments when they come from like an urban area and go to those places because they want to fit in. And if they don't feel like they belong, they like, I'm not coming here
Sure.
because you don't understand me. You don't understand my culture. And if, you know, everyone is not open to your culture. You have people that might say things. I went through experience where I had something was said. They didn't understand, you know, by LaSalle being a Catholic school, sometimes teachers might open up with a prayer. And they
Yes.
do the prayer, and I didn't stand. And it was like, why she's not standing? They didn't understand that. So it was a lot of different dynamics I had to go through.
Well, there wasn't surely at times, I guess, any multicultural sensitivity.
At all. Well, when I was actually now, there are more Muslims
Yes.
coming in now. It's really, no, like when I go there, I'm like, oh my gosh, wow. So it is changing because the time, everything is changing, but it was tough coming from this environment to that environment.
What made you stick it out?
Because it's like I can't lose. I'm not losing, and I'm not losing. I'm not going. I couldn't leave. It was like I liked it there. It was small. They work with you there. I liked it, but I was just like, I'm not leaving.
I enjoyed LaSalle when I was there myself.
like,
It
I'm
wasn't
not leaving.
never a small group of people when I went. It was LaSalle College then. I think it's
Okay.
LaSalle University.
University now.
Many, many years ago it changed. But I assume that and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm assuming that the experience you had here was helpful in making sure that you stayed at LaSalle and transitioned and got your bachelor's degree. Because, you know, it was a different population of people and actually more consistent with a traditional university, I would think.
Right.
Right?
And that's what the difference was too. A lot of things was coming from here to there. It was a difference in the way the structure
Yeah.
of the school, and like, oh, this is different from community, or we do this there. And a lot of the kids, it was this, because this is so big. So you know, if you're printing out paper, you better run and get it. So I remember one time saying to a girl, wait, I gotta get my paper before someone steal it. She said, did that happen to you before here? And I was like, oh no, I don't know. But out here it used to happen. You gotta get it. So it was different experiences. And you know, once the teachers in the social work department were very supportive of what I was going through.
Sure.
They were very supportive of what I was going through, as far as, you know, just the diversity and different things.
You know, as you talk about it, I just want to write one short story. When I graduated from college, I only had Christian brothers or priests.
Yeah.
And I was with nuns all through high school and elementary school. And when I went to graduate school, I saw for the first time in my life a regular female in front of the class. And it took me months to get over it. I mean, because I just couldn't deal with it.
Right.
And that's nothing compared to some of the stories
Yeah.
that you could relate to. So there is a sense of you would love to see universities be more, multicultural in the sense of
Right.
faculty, and we've surely tried that here
We
at
have.
Community. So I could see where it can throw you,
Yeah.
so to speak. Did that?
It's interesting though, because I didn't have an African American professor until I did my doctorate.
Oh,
So I never saw anyone in front of the classroom who looked like me.
oh,
So I didn't know it was possible. And when I had the opportunity to come here as a minority fellow, which is how I started 15 years ago,
I remember that.
I couldn't believe it. I'm like, I could actually teach because I hadn't had that experience, and I didn't get my doctorate until after I got here. So one of the things that was so important to me was being able to be a role model to other African American women specifically, that anything you want to do is possible. But like you said, David, education has to be that neutralizing force. It has to be the thing that sets you apart, so to speak. So
Yes.
So
Does
I-
some of this make sense to you?
It all makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Well, it makes sense to me now. And so in the context of where I started, when I would walk past Temple University and being a student at Temple University, it just came full circle. And I remember it was so significant to me that my first day of class at Temple University, when I got out of class, I drove to the house that I lived in when I would walk past Temple University, and I had an overwhelming sense of accomplishment.
Sure.
And I parked in front of the house, and I just sat there, and I just looked. I remembered those were the same stairs that I lined up my toys to sell. I put my toys up on the top stair, and I wrote out little tags for how much I was selling the toys for, because I was trying to buy some candy.
Yeah.
So I was going to sell. Don't laugh at me. I'm just messing. Yeah. So I always had a sweet tooth, and still do, but those were the exact stairs where it was. I sat on, and just there was so much despair, and so little hope, and now just there are just new horizons, and I sat there and I just reminisced.
what was your experience like at Chestnut Hill when you pursued your bachelor's?
Well, Chestnut Hill for me was an easy transition, and the content at Temple is an even easier transition, because Professor Arnold taught us in my associate degree process many of the things that I'm learning, or that some of the professors are going over at the master's level.
Right.
Incredible.
Yeah.
And so the behavioral health program literally armed me with the information that I needed to proceed with
What gave you a
my
foundation,
education.
I would hope. That's what we
Without a
tried.
doubt.
Yeah, the 200
Without
level
a doubt.
courses.
So I
If you
was
get the right
prepared.
foundation, you could then
Build.
build off of that foundation, because it's solid.
Right.
And I think that's important. Both of you kind of are a wonderful storytelling success, kind of. And I wonder, when you graduate, well, you graduated already, but as you graduate, I'm wondering, where do you see your life going from here in this context of having the education? I mean, where do you...
I think now, because with the Masters of Social Work, you are eligible for the licensure.
Right.
To take the licensing test. I think so. That's definitely a goal to accomplish, and it's crazy because it's like I'm always like looking to the next thing. So it's like, I mean, a part of me like, should I go get the PhD? Should I apply? Do I want to do this again? Because I usually go straight. So I'm thinking like, do I go get a PhD or no? And I don't know. So it's those decisions you make. But a part of me wants to. I want to go back to Widener to get a PhD, be in their program. So.
How about you?
So for me, there are two populations that I want to work with. And again, I can't mention it enough that my advancement in education has given me these options.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, you know, I don't have to take a job because I need a job. I take a job because this is the population that I want to work with. And so the population that my target population are at-risk adolescent males, particularly minority males, and also the geriatric community, because I took care of my pop-pop, as you know, for 15 years until he passed away. I was his primary caregiver. And then, and so those are the two populations that I'm going to work with. So now, if the need is great, I'll work with other populations.
Sure.
But the adolescent males are my target population, and in addition to the geriatric population. And just with the experience with my pop-pop, I was exposed to the need and how older people are abused and mistreated and neglected. And so those are the two populations that I'm intricately interested in.
As social workers, we know that everything's a system, right? So everything that we do impacts other people. Now that you've had this experience with education, how has it impacted your family, like the community right around you? Oh, who wants to take that one first?
I know I have two cousins that go here now. I think people see that if I could do it, some people say, you did it, I know I could do it, or that those kind of things, or I tell them that you can do it, or just seeing someone get a master's. I have a friend now, she goes to Whitener. She's in the master's program, so I think just letting people know that you can accomplish it.
For me, the community response was largely great, and so some people think you are who you are, and that's it. That's your like cattle. You're stamped, and that's it. And then there are others who think, wow, you know, your transition is inspiring, because I remember when you were, involved in things that you know.
You mean like dealing drugs?
Yeah, you whispered it like you don't have a mic on. Yeah, like
They like dealing drugs.
absolutely. And so sometimes people they witness the transition, but it's hard for them to accept, and that's okay too. But because I already know that people change, and I'm not the guy who was the armed robber over 23 years ago. And so for me, you know, the people, most people see who I deal with, because I don't even know anybody who have negative things to say, because I don't deal with negativity. I don't want to be bothered with it. It's like cancer. So the people who I surround myself with are really proud of the fact, because they were able to witness the transition. And from out of the
I would
darkness.
probably think, if it's reflective of my history also, is that you have very few of your old friends that you interact with,
Very few.
because you're in a positive space and they're still kind of either dead or in a negative space.
Sure.
And so when we reflect on our education, what do you suggest to people who could be watching this show about starting where you were, and what one needs to keep focused on to go forward?
So for me, I'm a huge proponent of education, particularly for those who have added hindrances and encumbrances, such as a criminal record. And so if you want to escape the huge recidivism, because we know that 2/3 of people who are released are projected to go back to prison within 3 years. 2/3, 2 out of 3 people. And so if you want to escape those types of statistics, the only studies show that people who become educated have a very low risk of returning to jail or prison, because a lot of the times they feel like, well, I've invested too much into my education to myself, so I don't want to go back. I'm employable, and so if you have those types, specifically those kinds of hindrances with a criminal record, the only way to neutralize that hindrance is through education. And like one of my professors told me, when you go to school, pick something that you like to do, because it's not work, just like you said earlier.
Yeah,
it's no longer work. You like to do it, and they pay you for it. Beat that. And
Yeah,
that's what you can do through education.
I totally agree with you. Kind of like when I get up in the morning, I don't feel like, oh, I got to go to work. You know, I just don't feel that way. And
I feel
haven't
like,
felt
what
that
does the
way.
day hold?
Yeah, I mean,
What am
I
I gonna
don't
get to do
I don't
today?
feel that way. I don't know whether it's because I was fortunate enough to pick a profession that I feel honored to be in. I mean, I don't know, which all of us are in now, so to speak, and working on. How about your?
I would agree with what David said, but I will also add, like, don't quit, and communicate with your professors, and communicate with them during office hours, because they're more down. You tell them, explain to them any barriers you have in your life, because I know we could say go to school, but a lot of people may have kids. A lot of people may have barriers, their job, how to go to school and work. Because I remember at one point I was doing both. Like, I was working full-time and taking 5 classes, doing so much, and then the internship. So, but if you communicate with your professors and let them know into your life, and maybe y'all could discuss how to get you to pass with everything else going on in your life, if you're experiencing a loss, if you dealing with other things, because all those things can be barriers to school. So I think communicating with your professors or counselors at the school is helpful.
Is there any final statement you'd like to make? Because we're kind of getting to the end of it. I will say that I think both of you are perfect examples of resilience. I mean, we talk about a lot in the classes about resilience and the ability to make transformative activities occur for you. And you surely, both of you, provide that kind of an example and a role model for other people. I think it's an important thing to remember, that your struggle is the struggle of many people, and the connection with all of those people is kind of important. You think?
Certainly.
I would
Yeah.
agree.
Or you want to say it?
I just want to say thank you for both coming and sharing so candidly about your experiences prior to education and how education has really impacted your life. And now it'll impact the lives of your families and your communities around you. So thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
And you give me a comfort to know that you're here. Well, that's all the time we have today. I'd like to thank my co-host, Dr. Terilyn Hickman Allen, and my 2 guests, David and Maya, for being here. I also like to thank you, the viewers, for tuning in. You have been watching the Tapestry of Life on CCP TV, the educational channel of Community College of Philadelphia. I am Dr. Pascal Scholes, Professor of Behavioral Health and Human Services. See you next time.